Hello, and welcome to this episode of Sewing is Hard with American Duchess. I am Abby.
And I'm Lauren.
And today, we're talking about skirts.
1830s skirts.
Woo! 1830s skirts.
So Abby, what is the biggest takeaway that you would have from making your 1830s skirt?
I don't know. That's a good question, actually, because they're not, I think it's always something we talk about a lot. People want to overthink 1830s skirts, but there's actually not that much to think about.
They're just rectangular panels.
1820s skirts and 18 skirts, yeah. They're gored and they're shaped. A little confusing. Post 1830s, you get back into gores. You get into some weird stuff just a few decades later. But 1830s is the return of simplicity and normalcy when it comes to skirts.
And very full skirts too. Our panels were about 56 inches wide each, and we did 2.5.
So mathematically, that's about 137.5 inches in circumference.
And that is a big skirt, you guys.
That's a lot of skirt. Looking at Workwoman's Guide, it says that if it's a very clinging material or thin material, you're going to need to use more to get the same effect. But if it's a stiffer hand, you can use a little bit less.
Now, something that I think is really important that we both learned is the length of the skirt in the 1830s.
It had to be just slightly above the ankle-ish. You don't want it too long because it really does mess with the portion of it. It's like this little fairy princess proportion.
Yeah, like a doll.
Yeah.
I actually had to shorten my skirt. So this is my little mess up here. I put the hem in and then I realized the skirt was too long, so I re-hemmed it again. Double the work, double the fun. Also still had it too long because it was coming down over my corded petticoats and then sort of collapsing at the bottom because it needed to be right about the same length as the corded petticoat and the organdy petticoat that I wore underneath. Now, something else that's really important about 1830s skirts is the hem facing on the skirt and how stiff and how deep it is.
So how wide did you make your hem facing?
Well, mine, I did an organdy and it was about 11 inches wide, and that was not wide enough for mine because my silk was kind of lightweight. When you look at fashion plates, you see the line is pretty much up to the knees, and I didn't think that was necessary and I was wrong. Now, yours wasn't.
No, my silk taffeta has a firmer hand to it, so I actually did 4 inches of a hem facing also in cotton organdy. And the reason I did this, in Workwoman's Guide, when she talks about facing the skirts, she actually says the height of the person can also be affected because if you have that stitch line so high up, it can cut the body. And I am very short-legged, and so I always err on the side of elongating my lower half.
Now, the original gown, it's made of lustring. Lustring is plain weave silk that's been gummed, and that gum reactivated with the steam, and that textile is like paper.
And this original gown, which I think is a little bit earlier than the 1830s, I think it's mid to late 1820s, it still has a facing in it. And it's a bit of a weird one, to be perfectly honest, but it's still interesting. So you can see the brown plain woven textile, either a linen or a cotton, has been put into the hem of the skirt, and they've attached it with very small running stitches, just about 1/8 of an inch from the top here.
I did my gown skirt openings in kind of a weird, stupid way.
No, it wasn't stupid.
In the Workwoman's Guide, it described, wrap front closing bodice having a drop front skirt. So it's all sewn together in the back, but then you have this sort of like round gown thing, and that's what I tried to make. It didn't really work at all. So what I ended up doing was stitching the waistband into the bodice, like up underneath there, and then finagling the skirt to where it would wrap over, and I had this whole system of hooks. I don't know how accurate that was, but it seems like something that 1830s seamstresses also would have come up against, trying to make the front closing bodice.
So with a back closing gown and a back closing skirt, you need to put a slit in there, and it needs to be about 7 to 12 inches, so that way you have enough room to pull the skirt on over everything or over your head and it doesn't get caught. You're gonna hem it up and just make sure you put some tacking stitches at the bottom of that slit to help reinforce it.
Yeah. Originally, I did my skirt on waistbands just like the original gown. That proved a little bit problematic. The original gown at the center back, it has a tacking stitch right about there, but I found that I had to sew it all the way along to get my waistband to not gap between the bodice and the skirt. I turned my top over, I just pinked it, and I did stroke gathers here.
So the waistband of the gown, it has been top stitched to the bodice, and then the skirt has been whip stitched right sides together. there. And I left it raw on the inside. I don't recommend this, but you can see I pinked at one part of the waistband, and then the bodice I left some seam allowance and just quickly, very coarsely overcasted over the raw edge. And you can see this, the waistband itself, I didn't actually even bother to pink underneath. Pocket slits.
Pocket slits. 1830s dresses do have them, just like 18th century dresses do.
I know, right guys? Isn't that awesome? There is an assumption that detachable pockets like you see in the 18th century weren't worn anymore because reticules came into fashion. But in the 1830s, they were worn. There are patterns for them in Workwoman's Guide. Walk around in your 1830s gown and be like, oh my gosh, that gown is so cute.
Yeah.
Like, thanks, it has pockets.
So we both put them in. Mine has them on both sides.
Mine's just on the one side, my right-hand side, because I only ever wear one pocket.
I only have one pocket, and yet I always put 2 pocket slits in.
Maybe it's because you want to like work on looking really cool and like casual. Like, thanks. And that's pockets. One's not a real pocket. Try to see if you can line up a seam so you don't have to cut into the fabric. That's obviously the best.
Yeah, definitely.
But if you do have to cut into the fabric, cut in about 7 to 12 inches. Hem it up very, very carefully. Put a few tacking stitches.
Reinforce the end there.
And you'll be fine. And just keep in mind that you want the pocket slit to line up with basically right where your underarm is. Because there's nothing worse than having a pocket slit that's like on your butt. And you're trying to like reach back there and like get to it.
Yeah. Mine aren't around to the side. They're like,
all right, guys. Well, that is it for 1830 skirts.
pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm. Get it? It's not very gory.
If you like what we've been doing and you want to help us get better, please hop on over to our Patreon, American Duchess. You can be a part of our development community. You'll get patterns and swag, and you can chat with us live. Thank you so much for your support and for watching, and we will see you next time.